Today, we are talking about winners and losers from the NFL draft, and now I want to talk a little bit about some veteran winners and losers. So, Alfredo, start us off. Who was a veteran that came out of the draft as a significant winner for you?
Yeah, I'm a little biased here because I started adding this player on my dynasty rosters, throughout the last regular season, hoping that this would happen, and everything has gone just absolutely perfect for Jordan Love, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And if you did go out and you acquired him while Aaron Rodgers was still on the team, you're feeling pretty good right now because you probably didn't have to give up much. And the Packers, it's the ultimate troll job by them, by the way, to finally go and start adding these skill players. And I wonder how much of that was the front office versus Aaron Rodgers just saying, like, I really don't want to work with a bunch of rookies. And now they go out, they add two tight ends, two wide receivers in the draft. Three of those skill players were drafted in the top 80 of the NFL draft. And the two tight ends also being so early makes me think they might be running a lot of that 12 personnel, which is two tight end sets. And I think they're going to start to add some different wrinkles to their offense. And it really looks like they want to make Jordan Love as comfortable as possible. And they want this team to do well under Jordan Love. And if he's not playing well, it kind of doesn't really matter. Like, there's no one else on this roster that's going to take over. They'll just keep letting him play. And if they have to tank, they tank, but he's going to be out there and there's going to be some sort of production. One of the receivers they drafted, Jaden Reed out of Michigan State, I really, really liked him. He was one of those guys I was talking up. And I was even a little bit surprised when he got such high draft capital where he was, I believe, at pick 50. But, he's going to be one of those players that could be a really nice little security blanket, almost like an Amon-Ra St. Brown type player that can work the slot or work outside if needed. And then they've got, Luke Musgrave, an athletic tight end. So they started to add all these different weapons. And that's not to mention the guys they had last year, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and then those two running backs, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I think the thing that a lot of people have not maybe necessarily thought about yet is that the Packers are in a division that's going to require a lot of passing to keep up with the Minnesota Vikings, to keep up with the Detroit Lions. And hey, the Bears even improved too, Dave. So congrats, man. Yeah, there might be some points there. But I think one of the common things that you see, the common theme that you see amongst this division is that the defense isn't very good and there's a lot of points that have to be scored. And so the Packers could be one of those teams. They could also just fall flat this year totally. But I think that everything is set up really nicely for Jordan Love to have himself finally that breakout season. And even right now, he's still valued pretty low. He's the quarterback 25 in dynasty startups. He's in that Brock Purdy, Mac Jones, Sam Howell area of drafts. And you know what? I think that the cost or risk with him is very low, while his skill set as a deep ball thrower, the addition of these weapons, everything that's going on in that division, he could end up being a pretty big steal in fantasy formats.
Yeah, I mean, the upside is undeniable. And after seeing how they, struggled with Brett Favre and then spent some time developing Aaron Rodgers on the bench and then struggled again with Aaron Rodgers. And now after a few years of development for Jordan Love, it's really easy to see the writing on the wall of how Jordan Love could just be the heir apparent for that next guy up. I'd hate to see it as a Bears fan, but you make some good points there. If you're looking for more video content, youtube.com/footballguys. Be sure to subscribe so you can see all of the video content that we have to offer. Every week we got a new episode of The Launchpad. We've got the Pretend GM. We've got the Football Guys College Show. We've got the Audible and so much more. youtube.com/footballguys. Now, Jeff, let's hear about your veteran winner from the NFL draft.
Yeah, a lot of the winners have been kind of banded about. I think Alfredo has a great one there with Jordan Love, and I'm going to go a little bit under the radar as a player that, Dave made a good point, and Dave talked about how you don't hate players, you hate ADP, and sometimes you love ADP too, and so Gabe Davis is going to be my veteran winner, and Gabe Davis is completely forgotten about because he was such a disappointment last year when he only had 800 yards and seven touchdowns as coming off as a top 20 wide receiver in drafts. And so what the Buffalo Bills did in the draft is they taking Dalton Kincaid in the first round. They're going to be able to play more 12 personnel. They're going to use Kincaid more as that slot receiver, that big slot. And so what they tried to do last year with the departures of Cole Beasley, with clearing out that depth chart a little bit, is they wanted to see Davis take a step forward in development. And so they thrust Davis into a role, and he really wasn't able to deliver on that. He got injured, and then we know Josh Allen got injured as well. And so he turned in a pretty disappointing year, even if he did end up with 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he's got 20 touchdowns in his first 3 years. And so he's a pretty productive guy, but that transition to 12 personnel, using Dawson Knox, using Dalton Kincaid, allows him to play heavier. And adding Osiris Torrance is another kind of under the radar move at the end of the second round. And so they're going to be able to play heavier, rely on that run game more, which is going to allow Gabe Davis to attack vertically more because you're going to have the defense coming up to play him. He's going to slide back behind instead of having that too high shell that they often ran with defenses against Josh Allen. We know the arm strength Josh Allen possesses. Gabe Davis is going to stay on the field every play. He's already done that over the last 2 years. And so he's going to be out there. He's going to be running vertical routes every play. Those touchdowns are going to be there. That production's going to be there. But this year, that ADP is a lot better price than what you had last year because of the consensus hate on him. And again, there was a lot of different factors that played into last year. And even after the season, the team talked about the injury that he suffered that really kind of sapped his ability to contribute like they wanted him to. And so I think that this is an area where people are just very off him, very fading him, and you're going to step in with one of the elite quarterbacks in fantasy football, one of the elite offenses, and it's really structured much better for him to attack vertically, which is his strength.
Yeah, post-type sleepers. I mean, you
Yeah.
can make a lot of money just targeting those post-type sleepers, the guys that everybody falls in love with for very good reason, and then they don't have a good season. Everybody completely overcorrects, shoves them down draft boards, and then you get them at great discounts next year. So I'm with you. Gabe Davis last year, 3rd-round price tag. No, not really too happy about that. But if I can get him now in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, bet you bottom dollar I'm in. And Alfredo, you missed the memo, unfortunately. This is the time that we were supposed to just hype up our teams. You know, Jeff is sitting here pumping up Gabe Davis. You had every opportunity to talk about how somebody in Miami was a winner, and you passed on it. So I'm going to take this opportunity right now to talk about Justin Fields coming out of the draft as a winner. And right now, I mean, you can see it. The Bears are doing everything they possibly can to set Justin Fields up for success. I'm not sure what else you can ask of an organization besides what they've done already. And while he technically came out of draft weekend as a winner, we can actually look back a little bit before that to kind of talk about how they have used this draft to position Justin Fields into a spot where he could succeed. And that started with trading back from 101, bringing in a haul of picks, but most importantly, DJ Moore, the wide receiver 1 that we've wanted to see on the Bears for all of these years. So that in its own right was a massive W. I mean, they could have walked away right then and called it quits, and I'd have been happy. But then they went and used that 8th overall pick to trade back again. And they used that 8th overall pick to get 2 players. They moved back 1 spot to get Darnell Wright, and Darnell Wright is arguably the best offensive lineman in this class, and he's going to be the week 1 starter at right tackle for the Bears. And all of a sudden, the Bears have a pretty good offensive line when you look at it. They didn't have the splashiest offseason, but Braxton Jones was a steal in the draft last year. They're going to start him at left tackle alongside with Darnell Wright on the right side. They've got Tevin Jenkins, who was hasn't lived up to his lofty draft expectations so far, but after a move to guard, he stepped up pretty good last year. And then they got Nate Davis in free agency, who Jeff can talk about, a utility guard from Buffalo who should do well. And then Cody Whitehair, another guy who was drafted as a guard but has been playing center. That's a pretty formidable group of offensive linemen. But when they traded back to get Darnell Wright, they also picked up a 4th-round pick, which they used on Tyler Scott. Not the flashiest name in the draft, but he's an under-the-radar day 3 pick who will work into a pretty deep rotation of wide receivers. And then all of a sudden, their backfield, Khalil Herbert, Deonta Foreman, Rashawn Johnson. Not the 3 splashiest names, but this is a hard-hitting group of running backs. Alfredo, you and I, it seems like somehow Khalil Herbert comes up on every single show that we do together. I have loved Deonta Foreman since he was drafted. And then Rashawn Johnson was a guy that I was really hoping the Bears would target. Those are 3 mean guys coming out of the backfield. So not the splashiest, sexiest group of names here, but they have a deep and strong group of pass catchers, offensive linemen, and running backs that they can build around Fields now. And the nice thing is when you're looking at this, I'm writing an article right now that'll go a little bit deeper into it that I can share on Twitter. Be sure to follow it, Dave Kluge, so you can see when that comes out. But Justin Fields really increased his passing efficiency at the end of the year. We look at this rookie season that you can just kind of throw in the trash because Matt Nagy really screwed up the development of Justin Fields by having him play with the second team. And then, the beginning of the 2022 season, it was this very archaic offense as Eberflus was trying to get a new system underway in Chicago. But if you look at the last 8 games, Justin Fields completed almost 64% of his pass attempts. And now we can see what he can do surrounded by good talent. So it's hard to look at Justin Fields and not peg him as a winner coming out of the draft. So we've talked about Jordan Love, Gabe Davis, and Justin Fields as our winners, but now we got to talk about the losers as well. And Alfredo, start us off with Unfortunately, I'm peeking at the show sheet here. I know this is one of your guys, so I know this is going to hurt to talk about, but tell us why Kenneth Walker comes out of this draft as a loser.
Yeah, and I'm doing a
And I'm just
lot
going to
of
say you cheated. You cheated. You took Zach Charbonnet as a winner and Ken Walker as a loser. You're just doing the same homework twice here.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, if they're both losers, like, yeah, it just makes sense because they really are. Like, as a dynasty manager that has Ken Walker on my team, like, there is not a worse feeling right now. It ruined my day when the Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet in the second round, and you can copy and paste a lot of the same things I said about Zach Charbonnet in our previous talk. If you haven't watched or listened to that, go back to it because it's a really annoying situation. And like I mentioned before, it's great for real football. It's great for the Seahawks. It stinks for fantasy football. But I will say this, the silver lining is that these guys complement each other well. Ken Walker is going to be more of the explosive big play threat, whereas Charbonnet is going to be more of the grinder. And, he's one of the things that Pete Carroll talked about was that Zach Charbonnet is a great pass blocker. Now, that doesn't get you super excited for fantasy, but it does mean that he'll be out there on passing downs. And I think that these guys are going to work in sync a lot. But no matter how you slice it, no matter how much you want to give this, you can't polish the turd, man. Like, that's it. Like, Ken Walker is no longer that top 5 dynasty running back. He's no longer going to be the guy that's going to be getting all these touches that we really want. And the Seahawks, I think that what happened last year was that they kind of changed their philosophy, and it worked for a bit, but they do want to get back to that running. And when Seahawks GM John Schneider called Zach Charbonnet, it was really funny to hear him say, "Hey man, we run the crud out of the ball, right?" First, I haven't heard someone say crud in at least 15 years.
Since third grade.
Yeah, right. Like since 1996. So so to hear him say that, and to hear like that's where they intend to go this season, I guess there's a silver lining there. But man, I'm not excited about Ken Walker for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about the Seahawks a lot on this show because I'm going to bring up a Seahawks player in a little bit as well too. But yeah, it's tough to see this guy that gets touted as a top 5 dynasty running back, and then all of a sudden just completely gets kneecapped in the draft, which is a nice transition into Jeff Bell's veteran loser. Who do you want to talk about here, Jeff?
So I'm gonna attack one of Dave's guys. I'm gonna go with Travis Etienne. And so Travis Etienne last year, when he had that up and down season, he came in and James Robinson got all those carries, and we were all brokenhearted early in the season. And then Robinson was injured, and Travis Etienne just took off, and he was fantastic up until about week 8, and then he was averaging about just over 6 yards per carry. From week 8 on, defenses adjusted, and defenses said, we're not going to allow Travis Etienne. His brother is Trevor Etienne of Florida, so I get the two of them a little bit confused living in the Debbie land. But anyways, we're not going to allow Travis Etienne to attack us anymore. We're going to play up and shut him down. And so he dropped the second half of the season. He really wore down, was really closer to 4 yards per carry. And Trevor Lawrence, on the other hand, took off. Trevor Lawrence was about an 80% 80% passer rating the first half of the season, and then that jacked up to 100% over the second half of the season. There was great development there, and once the season was over, Doug Peterson said, we really want to run a committee here. That's what we're targeting and doing. And so even in free agency, the team made sure to bring back Jermichael Hasty, who they picked up in midseason last year, and then they added as well Dearness Johnson, who's a good productive back. But then on draft night, they went out on day 2 and they added Tank Bigsby. And so when you look at Tank Bigsby is a more polished running back than Travis Etienne. And Travis Etienne I think there's a disconnect on what type of player people think he is versus what type of player he actually is. He's not an overly developed wide receiver of the ball. And so I think a lot of people think that he's that Reggie Bush type back, and he's not really that player. He's very explosive. He's a great athlete, but doesn't have a lot of wiggle, doesn't have a lot of those running back, the kind of that, second nature that running backs have when they're running the ball. And so I think Tank Bigsby has that in spades. And so that's the thing that I think you're going to see Bigsby really work in there. But even then, you're going to see, I think, Dearness Johnson get some carries. Jermichael Hasty is going to be involved. I think they're going to use all these backs because you think back and you look at Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, and when they had Miles Sanders drove everybody nuts for a couple seasons because they wouldn't just give the ball to Miles Sanders. And I think that Travis Etienne just became Miles Sanders this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be the case. And I ran a poll on Twitter today saying, how does Tank Bigsby affect Travis Etienne's value in fantasy football? The majority of the people are saying he doesn't. 47.5%, 45% are saying negatively. So there's a very small sliver that is sipping on some copium, trying to act like this was a positive. And I guess if you're going to try to spin this as a positive, the idea would be that Tank Bigsby takes the early down work, Travis Etienne maintains the goal line work, and assumes pass catching work as well. But that's asking for a pretty big change in offensive philosophy from Doug Peterson. So I'm with you, Jeff. I made a trade right before the draft where I acquired Travis Etienne. And before the draft, it looked like a really nice trade. Now, in hindsight, not looking quite so nice. So, yeah, it's hard to look at Travis Etienne as anything but a loser from the draft. And we've already talked about the Seahawks quite a bit earlier in the show when we were talking about rookie winners and losers. We talked about Zach Charbonnet, talking about veteran losers. We talked about Ken Walker. And I am going to talk about another veteran loser on the Seahawks, Tyler Lockett. And first of all, what I want to say is we're talking about Charbonnet, Ken Walker, and Tyler Lockett all being losers here. But despite that, I think this is all great for the Seattle Seahawks offense. We're talking
They're going
about
to be so good.
they are going to be very good. We're just talking about individual player value in fantasy football, where these guys all took a ding, but man, is it going to be a fun offense in Seattle this year. But it's really hard to look at Tyler Lockett and expect him to maintain what he's done over the last few years. And you might be listening to this show saying, Dave, I listened to you 2 weeks ago on a show with Herms and Nate Polvote, and you were telling me to draft Tyler Lockett in best ball. How dare you say he's a loser now? Well, things done change. This isn't the same offense anymore, and I am backtracking on this take. Everything that I said still stands true. This dude is an Iron Man. He doesn't miss games. He's been a wide receiver 16 or better in 5 straight seasons. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, he is going to step right into the role that Tyler Lockett has played over the last few seasons. And it looks like this might actually be the end of the Tyler Lockett era in Seattle. The Seahawks, they locked Tyler Lockett up on a contract through age 34, which was kind of a head scratcher at the time when they gave him that deal a few years ago. But they were savvy enough to put an out in there, and they can cut him after this season and save $30 million. Now, I'm not a GM. I don't know exactly what they're thinking in Seattle, but I'd like to think that they probably don't want to pay an age 32 and 33-year-old wide receiver $30 million. So it's likely that Lockett is gone after this year. And this seems to be what they have done in years past. They had Doug Baldwin, and then they drafted a young Tyler Lockett to fill in that role. And now that Tyler Lockett's getting up there in age, they draft JSN, who can fill that role as well. JSN was the wide receiver 1 in this class and is kind of a solid comp to late career Tyler Lockett. People have this misconception that Tyler Lockett's a burner, but over the last few years, he's become a much better route runner all over the field. He's got that twitchy movement, very sure-handed, can always pick up the first down, can beat you deep, can beat you underneath, and that's a lot of what JSN does. In addition to that draft pick, they also, like we talked about, took on Zach Charbonnet, which means that they're probably going to start running the ball a little bit more. So Lockett, just looking at the situation, he's about to turn 31. It looks like the team drafted his replacement. Could make a decent target for 2023 still as he's in Seattle, but it's hard to imagine that he's got much value beyond this season. So that'll do it. We talked about winners and losers as rookies, winners and losers as veterans. We covered it all today. Before we sign off, though, one more time, Jeff, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
For whom J Bell tolls on Twitter and any other device that I might be signed up on as well, that would be my screen name as well. But thank you so much, Dave.
Of course. And Alfredo, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @ThePretendGM, which is also the name of my show. Next Monday, we're going to be doing a rookie mock draft, so we're going to keep all that rookie content going here at Football Guys.
Yeah, excited to see it. I mean, this is the time of year where we get to dive deep into this. Like I said, unfortunately, I will be out the next couple of weeks traveling, but we'll be back the week of May 23rd to dive into some 2023 redraft sleepers and busts. We're about to take off those dynasty hats and put on our redraft caps. It's about that time of year. But of course, you can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, but be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys so you can see all of our video content. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. On the right side of your screen, you'll be able to see some other videos that we have, like the Pretend GMs episode from earlier this week, where Alfredo talks about some quarterback landing spots. If you haven't already, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you can see all of the video content that Football Guys has to offer.